Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, November the 7th, 2017, and this is the Fourth and Wrong podcast. I'm RJ, and joining me as always is Keith. Say hi, Keith.
Hi, Keith.
We're recording on a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Oh my god. I mean, it's always a Tuesday, every time.
Every time it's a Tuesday. And when you're listening to it, it's also a Tuesday.
Anyways, let's talk about football.
Okay?
Let's talk about the Browns, because we can get it over real quick. You had a bye week.
Hell yeah, Browns didn't lose.
So you didn't lose. One of us had to, so let's talk about the Bills.
Okay.
We played the Thursday night game, which was nice. It was it's year 3 of the supposed Color Rush series. Are they actually doing that this year? I feel like I haven't really seen it.
No, they are. It's the same uniforms from last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't really seen it.
Well, I mean, did you watch the Bills game?
Well, yeah. So the Jets had it,
yeah,
but this is
saw it.
Yeah, well, this is also year 3 now of Color Rush.
Uh-huh.
And the first year was the infamous Bills-Jets colorblind game.
We didn't get a repeat of that. Thank God.
Well, since then, last year, the Bills wore red, and this year the Jets got to wear their all-green uniforms with their chrome green helmets.
Right.
But in both of those years, the opposing team wore, like, primarily white.
Yep.
So...
I will say, though, that both of y'all's colored Rush uniforms were pretty fly.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Color Rush. I like it.
That all-red Bills uniform actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, ultimately, Color Rush is just a way for the NFL to like squeeze more money out of people. But
yeah.
I'm not going to say it's unsuccessful because the moment they unveiled Cleveland Browns Color Rush uniforms, I totally went out and bought like 2 Color Rush shirts and the Color Rush hat.
Maybe have us play some team, I don't know, other than the Jets on our one primetime game a year on Thursday night so that we can wear goddamn jerseys.
Yeah.
Assholes. Anyways, the Bills played.
Yeah.
That game hurt to watch. I don't know, not really hurt, maybe so much as just like it sucked, and I was basically sitting there constantly tapping my foot waiting for the thing to happen, and it never happened.
Oh, okay.
The thing being whatever. The thing being LaShawn, getting loose for, a 50-yard touchdown, or the defense getting a turnover at some point like they've been doing so frequently. Mm-hmm. But that didn't really happen. The Bills had a really bad sack on their first drive that took them down on like the 8. Buffalo was still trying to run Mike Tolbert up the middle a lot, and it's still not working. The Jets ended up stopping us, getting the ball back, and getting on the board first with a touchdown run by McCown. And that guy can run for a 38-year-old.
Yeah, no kidding. McCown looked very nimble that game.
Yeah, annoyingly so.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really have to do much.
No, there was kind of just a lot of room, and he said, I'm going to go there where the space is.
Well, that's called awareness.
Yeah, well...
That's good runner's vision for a 38-year-old quarterback.
Josh McCown had more rushing attempts and more rushing yards than Mike Tolbert. So
it's not wrong.
Just gonna put that out there.
And more rushing touchdowns too. Every rushing stat was better.
On the next Jets drive, Leonard Johnson dropped a should have been sure interception. Thrown by Josh McCown. Mm-hmm. And that really sucked because I think that would have put us inside of their 20 and really, even the game up. I think it was 7-7 at that point. Missing that meant it basically would have changed the entire flow of the game going forward, I think, at that point. On our following drive, though, or, later on in it, Zay Jones actually started to come alive, and that guy caught some passes.
Yeah, look at him go.
That guy caught, I think, as many passes or close to it as he had caught all year up to that point.
He's trying to get on that probationary bum list.
Yeah, he's starting to turn around, and if he continues to play like this, I will be much happier. Still not a huge amount of yardage, but 6 for 7. But one of the passes that was thrown at him was on an offside by the Jets, so it was basically just a free play. Yeah. Tyrod just chucked it at the end zone.
Yeah, they don't count those if it was an incompletion. If the penalty was counted, then they don't count it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, on his third target, or I guess his second target, he catches a ball for a third down, and on his third catch, he catches one for a touchdown. He goes on to screw up his knee by hyperextending it, but he came back for a bit of the game and then seemed to screw it up again, and I didn't really see him after that. To be fair, I didn't watch all the way to the end of the game.
I wouldn't have either.
The offensive line really couldn't keep Tyrod on his feet this game. By the end of the game, they had 7 sacks. They had 5 in the first half.
Yeah.
Jordan Matthews ended up killing a drive for us by fumbling at the end of the first half, reaching for a first down, so that also kind of screwed up our potential. It felt like a lot of early on the Bills just like not capitalizing where they need to. And the thing that we say about a lot of playoff teams, like to really truly be a great team, you have to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. The Jets are a team that the Bills are supposed to beat this season. They're a divisional team, so it counts extra. We would have been back on top of the AFC East, and it would have been week 9, and not, week 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some key points that I took away from this game. Like you said, Buffalo should have won this game, obviously. Mm-hmm. But you can't win football games when your turnover differential is as bad as this one was against a team that is also doing what they're supposed to do on defense.
Right.
Buffalo had 3 turnovers, and
we had as many turnovers this game as we had all season.
Right. So you've doubled your turnovers in one game. And then Tyrod Taylor was sacked 7 times. And then the running game couldn't get started off of some running backs and quarterback that have been pretty much not necessarily dominating, but that was pretty much the most consistent part of that offense. So now you're having to rely more on Tyrod Taylor's arm because nothing else is really working, which wasn't terrible of a thing. He was fairly accurate. I think he's still a little nervous to throw the deep ball consistently, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I just don't think that he's got any deep zone targets. Like, what I was going to say is Deontay Thompson might be his best shot at this point, and he's a guy that we picked up and has really shown up in the last couple of weeks, has a little bit of speed, can consistently catch the ball.
Sure.
But, him and Nick O'Leary, Nick O'Leary's been a really solid, like, middle distance target, that 15 to 20, not crazy deep.
Sure, yeah.
But not, short or check down game. Nick O'Leary also fumbling a ball late in the game when he either thought he was down by college rules after his reception or thought he got touched, but he didn't. He stood up, got tackled by 2 Jets defenders who kind of stood him up and knocked the ball out of his hand.
I remember that play, yeah.
I think
he was kind of walking away, and a Jet came up from behind him and hit him and kind of like stripped the ball away.
Well, yeah, he wasn't even walking away. He was like standing up, and then they came at him, and he turned his back on them, and then he got it batted away.
Right.
But that was pretty much the point. I almost didn't remember that play, and I was like, oh, right, this is where I turned this game off because it was, 7-24 still.
Yeah.
And I had, legendary Ingrams to get.
At least one thing you can take away like positively from this game is the fact that Tyrod Taylor found some decent chemistry with all of his receivers. He spread the ball pretty well, and he was fairly accurate in doing so. It was mostly, short mid-range passes, but 285 yards for 2 touchdowns isn't a bad outing.
Especially while taking 7 sacks.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with how much pressure the Jets were bringing and stuff. I've said for the past 2 years that the Jets probably have one of the most violent, one of the most physical front sevens in the league. If not front sevens, their defensive line is nuts. But the problem with the Jets is they never get going. This was a game where they got going. They got going early, and by the time it was time for the Bills to nut up, they just could not get anything going to combat that momentum. I'm not a huge fan of declaring that the momentum is what killed them, but in a sense it really did. When you can't score more than a touchdown in 3 quarters and you're leading the AFC East and you're a potential playoff team and you can't score more than once in 3 quarters against the Jets, you're struggling. So by the time that 4th quarter comes around, then the Jets are able to pile on 2 more scores on you in that 4th quarter, and now you're just playing from garbage time from that point.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the scoring for the Bills came at the end of the game was after this game was pretty much well out of reach. Now, granted, they started doing some crazy stuff and actually, made a threat of things, but they had already let up too many points and not capitalized enough early on. There's something to be said about it being a short week. Again, playing on Thursday night, though we haven't talked about that any of the other games this season. But we can also talk about the fact that it was the week right after the trade deadline, and then it being a short week meant Kelvin Benjamin was not on the field for the Bills, which, we can always say could have changed things. Who knows?
Right. But it would have been a question mark.
Even just him running in a straight line.
Sure. But it would have been a question mark whether or not he even would have came and played.
It was a bad game. The Bills' defense didn't do what they've been doing this season.
Yep. No picks. First game with no picks.
First game with no turnovers,
yeah,
I think.
Sure.
In the last couple of games, I think we had been getting at least 3 a game. Like, I think we came into this game getting at least 3 turnovers a game for the last 3 or 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
The other thing New York was able to do was get some rushing done, mostly by committee, though Matt Forte and Bilal Powell both over 70 yards. Buffalo not able to stop the rush, which is something you need to do.
Yeah, definitely not. And Bilal Powell, having a 50-yard scramble out of nowhere when he was kept pretty much well in check. But Matt Forte being able to average for 5 yards a carry, his longest rush being 20 yards, so we can pretty much call that 5 yards a carry legitimate. And you got to stop somebody pounding like that.
Yeah, but basically what we saw was Buffalo's D not really getting anything together, and Buffalo's offensive line not being able to open any holes, not being able to keep Tyrod on his feet, not really being able to do much of anything against the Jets' defense. So
yep. And then
hats off to them. We always knew that part of the team was not inconsequential. I mean, the biggest question mark about the Jets this season was like, who was their offense? We still knew that their defense was pretty good, and they spent a first and a second round pick on safeties, I believe I heard one of the commentators say.
Yeah.
This last year, and those guys showed up to play also. So their defense seems pretty stout and well-rounded, and we're finding out that their offense is led by a 38-year-old journeyman who's got the record for being on the most teams as a quarterback, who can sling that ball around to people like Jermaine Kearse, who was a major factor in a Super Bowl at one time. And also, run the ball a little bit as an old-ass quarterback.
Good for him.
And then, if your offensive line can open up a couple holes and get your running game going, that doesn't hurt either.
Who knows? Maybe if he gets on the TB12 method, he can play till he's 45.
So moving on, next on the docket, Ravens and the Titans. And that was kind of a football game. We had a lot of games this week that are relatively close in score, but a lot of them that still turned out to be like, yep, that was a football game.
Yeah, this game was pretty exciting to watch. I only watched a little bit of it, but it was, from both teams, is about what you would expect as far as performance. Tennessee's still struggling to get the rushing game going, but solid outing from Mariota and solid outing from the defense, and they were able to really sneak one away because Baltimore was rolling in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of very similar stats with, Joe Flacco just putting up a few more passing yards, but ultimately Tennessee just eking it out. Joe Flacco also putting up one more interception.
Yeah, definitely not helping. Towards the end of the game, the Ravens had a pretty long drive that just ate up way too much time to bring it close. The last drive of the game was 16 plays for a touchdown. Now, it was 16 quick plays, but they drove down the field in about 3 minutes and left themselves with about 40 seconds to win the game.
Yeah, that's not enough time.
Yeah, it's just not enough time.
I was going to say, after a certain point, 16 plays is still 16 plays, and you sure as hell don't have 14 timeouts.
Yeah, if they were moving, exactly. If they were moving that quickly in, say, like 9 plays, that got down the field in a similar amount of yardage, they probably could have cut that drive in half. But
right.
But that last drive they had gave them about 40 seconds. So obviously there was an onside kick, and then that didn't work. It came down to the wire, and that's one thing. Even if the play is, because I'm not going to say the play was mediocre. The play from both teams was about standard. I wish Tennessee's rushing game was able to do them a little bit more, because I like Derrick Henry and I like DeMarco Murray, and I like it when they're having on days. And that is just such a dangerous rushing tandem. But if you can just stuff them all day, then they're going to start relying a little bit more on Mariota. Mm-hmm. And what really, I think, swung the difference into Tennessee's favor was the turnovers.
Right. Yep.
Once again, when you're playing teams that can produce the way these teams can, you got to limit your turnovers. You got to protect the ball. Tennessee can be dangerous, especially when Mariota gets on a little bit of a roll. He was contained relatively well along with the rest of the rushing game, so he leaned on his familiar targets, his comfortable target. He saw Rashard Matthews a lot. He saw Delaney Walker a lot, and he was able to march the ball down the field. I think if Joe Flacco would have limited the turnovers a little bit, the game would have turned out a little bit differently.
Pretty much the one takeaway I have from this game was how important those turnovers for the Titans were.
Yeah, when this game was as quote-unquote low-scoring as it was, those turnovers are substantially more important. The reason why we're always impressed with Deshaun Watson going out there and throwing 4 touchdowns on 3 turnovers, but we ignore the 3 turnovers because there was fucking 70 points scored that game. So, of course, there was going to be more turnovers than regularly because the ball is being thrown a hell of a lot more because the score is so much higher.
Also because the Texans will also go out there and take it away a couple times, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's going to be turnovers back and forth. The score is going to be driven up high, but when the score is in that, that 14, 17, 20-point range, every turnover can make or break you. When you get into the second half and you receive the ball at the second half and the second play you throw a pick, but then the Titans can't turn around and capitalize, they end up punting the ball. They go 3 and out, but then you go 3 and out. Then they go 3 and out, and then you turn and then you punt the ball away again. We went all the way, I think it was 5 or 6 drives until somebody finally did something, and it was a turnover on downs.
Right.
That wasn't a punt, and then the Titans threw an interception, and then you turn back and capitalize from that interception, and then it's touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. So unable to establish a rhythm after halftime, especially when throwing a pick, your first drive of the half, and then your second drive of the first half, you threw a pick that they turned into a 3-play touchdown. So those picks either caused swing points or it killed it killed your kind of energy or your momentum that you're trying to build coming out of the second half, especially down by 2 scores. By the time the Titans threw their only interception of the game, it was relatively late, and I'm not saying it was insignificant, but you've given yourself such a short clock after being so inefficient with the ball earlier that it's not necessarily beneficial.
Okay, so I think that's what we've got for Ravens-Titans. Let's move on next to the Buccaneers and the Saints.
Yeah, I think we haven't talked enough about the Saints, really, as far as their success.
I feel like they're really flying under the radar, and the biggest thing about the Saints up until a couple weeks ago was the controversy around Adrian Peterson and him playing or not playing or how much he's playing or what's going on, and then he got traded, and now all of a sudden you look at the Saints and you're like, oh, they're really good.
Yeah, I think there was so much focus, at least from us, from AP's playing time, and we completely ignored the fact that they won 6 straight games.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also, they started off real slow.
Yeah,
so
they started off 0-2. So
when you start off in a hole, it takes you until week 5 to get out of that to begin with, and then after that, it's still like, they're only 3-2 or they're only 4-2, and then after that, it's like, oh, they're 5-2, and then this week it's like, oh, now they're 6-2. Yep. So yeah, now is about the time that we should really start paying attention to them again.
Absolutely.
If we continue to sleep on them, then it would be a problem.
It would be a problem, sure. Well, we see you now, New Orleans.
Yeah, we see you, New Orleans. We see you putting up points. We see you playing against Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yep. we see you with the sick special teams and defensive scoring. And
whatnot. God, yeah.
Dude, that punt block was intense.
Yeah, punt blocks basically slammed, one-hopped it to himself right back into his hands.
Yep.
So this was for the Saints. Return for a touchdown. Just pretty much the most immediate punt block run I've ever seen that wasn't just like somebody basically straight up intercepting the kick, which does happen on occasion, but that probably hurts.
Probably a little bit. A lot of stress on the hands. Yeah, he pretty much just dribbled it to himself and just kind of he could have walked it in. He had so much jump on that damn ball. He almost got to the punter before the snap did.
Saints running back Kamara ended up having one hell of a game, including one run in particular where I believe it was his touchdown run. He ends up shaking this would-be tackler directly off his hips, just basically one big swing and tosses him. Mm-hmm. Basically in stride, and I was like, wow, that's who's this guy?
Right, yeah. This was one of those games once again where turnovers killed the team, but in a substantially more lopsided way. New Orleans actually fumbled the ball a fair bit. They just got lucky and recovered 2 of them. I think one of the key differences here is the Saints' ability to not let the fumble shake them. because at the end of the day, minus one recovery they had from the Tampa Bay side, they were able to pretty much stay even on their turnover differential. And their defense was just monstrous. I think the Saints probably have one of the more underrated defenses in the NFC at this point because, like I said, they've stayed off the radar from us for so long.
It's possible.
Yeah, but now obviously half the game was played with Fitzpatrick because Jameis Winston, his throwing shoulder started to act up, the one he's had injured. And they went ahead and benched him to kind of see about properly rehabbing that shoulder. I'm pretty sure he's going to sit this coming week as well.
Yeah, and then Fitzpatrick and Winston have basically identical games.
Pretty much basically identical games, which if you put the two games together, still not very impressive.
Not a really good game.
Nope. They didn't have a single receiver break 30 yards. Mike Evans had 6 targets and only caught 1 ball.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, but on the opposite side of it, Drew Brees was throwing the ball with almost laser-like precision, which is something you would expect from Drew Brees. And his ability to move the ball to the key targets, if there's one thing I do kind of believe in, it's the hot hand,
Sure.
And Alvin Kamara was having a hot game. Get him the ball. He's gonna make things happen.
You know what I believe in?
What's that?
Agile running backs in space.
Right.
So I want to know how many of Alvin Kamara's yards came after the catch.
Probably almost all of them.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
that helps.
Oh, absolutely. This game will pretty much start the conversation of why did everybody this week think they were playing hockey? Because there was 5 ejections.
Oh, yeah, just from fighting and shit.
Yeah, just from fighting and being assholes, which is funny because Mike Evans actually wasn't one of those ejections, although he definitely probably should have been ejected. Pretty much what happened was Jameis Winston was on the sideline, and he kind of two-finger shoved one of the Saints' defensive players, and so the defender turned around and pushed Winston back, and then Mike Evans came out of nowhere and just blindside hit him off the sidelines.
Wow.
Yeah, and he wasn't ejected, so that's fun. He did get suspended for a game, though, so he's not going to be playing this week.
It's because he didn't push a ref.
Right, yeah, don't push refs. Or don't actually throw a punch, and you'll be okay.
But yeah, Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, mediocre on the day. Drew Brees, very efficient. His wide receivers, very efficient. Michael Thomas, lowest efficiency pretty much, but still getting 8.1 yards per catch average. 8 receptions on 11 targets, so pretty good percentage there. Just, not a huge number of yards, but New Orleans looked like New Orleans.
Sure.
Their rushing game definitely helped them out there. Again, a little bit of kind of what the Jets saw, 2 people at or just under 70 yards rushing for them.
And especially if your top receivers aren't really having the best day, because obviously we didn't see any of the marquee. I mean, Ted Ginn had a couple of receptions, but we didn't see any of the marquee Saints that we're used to seeing at the top of the receiver board. So it's nice to have that buffer with your rushing game to where you don't have to really rely on those targets.
Well, I'm ready to talk about the Rams and the Giants. What about you?
Holy shit.
How do you feel about the Rams now, Keith?
Well, I mean, I already told you a week or 2 weeks ago that I will concede to you that the Rams are probably going to be the shootout team of the year.
Yeah.
But, my God.
Hot diggity damn.
Hot diggity damn. The Giants got fucking massacred.
Yo, don't let the Rams come to your stadium. They're 4-0 on the road.
Yeah, their 2 losses are at home. Yeah, what really killed me about this game was the lack of defensive touchdowns on the Rams. Those 51 points are legitimate offensive 51 points.
Yeah.
And, 6 touchdowns total on the offense. Plus 3 field goals. That means they got downfield on successful scoring drives 9 times. And even with that, Jared Goff only threw the ball 22 times.
Yeah.
The team only rushed in total 39 times. That's efficient football. That's what that is. Just big chunk yards. Fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you look at their play-by-play, if you go drive for drive, their touchdown drives are 4 or 5 plays at a time,
Right.
They had one of their field goal drives was 9 plays. They had a turnover in the Giants' red zone.
Well, I mean, really all you got to do is look at their wide receiver numbers. Robert Woods, 4 for 5, 70 yards. Sammy Watkins, 1 for 1, 67 yards.
Yeah, right.
Cooper Kupp, 3 for 5, 54 yards. Like, Cooper Kupp had their lowest average, and he averaged, like, out of guys that, did decently, he averaged 18 yards per reception. Mm-hmm. Todd Gurley averaged 22 and a half. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry. Robert Woods averaged 17.5, but also had 2 touchdowns, so that ain't bad.
No.
Four receptions on 5 targets. It's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Gerald Everett had 1 reception for 44 yards. Mm-hmm. Sammy Watkins, again, had 1 for 67 and a touchdown. So, yeah, they were very quick and efficient with their game.
Yep. And 3 turnovers. It's pretty hard to get any wind in the sail when not only are you not scoring and you can't get the ball down the field, you keep turning it over to a team that can score pretty much on demand, because that's what was going on. LA was pretty much just going, I think this is a good drive to score, and then they throw it for 60 yards and a touchdown.
I just want to say, Buffalo wide receivers did get 3 receiving touchdowns this week. They were just playing against a different New York team.
They were on the Rams instead of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
shit.
Yeah, it wasn't even a football game. It wasn't fun to watch, Eli looked like Eli's looked all season. He's not getting protected very well, and when he is, he's still struggling with not having any receivers out in the field, but Sterling Shepard was in there, and he was relatively okay. But none of his receivers were efficient, which really speaks that the quarterback wasn't efficient, because not all of those can be drop targets. They're just not.
I think that's the biggest thing to look at is, the receiving game and how the receivers at the top specifically did, because, again, you've got the Rams who've got people going 4 for 5, 1 for 1, that kind of stuff with big chunk yardage, whereas you've got the top of New York's receiving both going for 70 yards but doing it on 4 for 10 and 5 for 9.
Right.
That's a lot of missed opportunities, be they overthrows or dropped balls.
Absolutely. And especially
Eli's suffering that late stage Manning syndrome thing.
Yeah, and the issue is he doesn't have the defense or the talent around him to kind of lift him up and help him. DRC back on the field, good for him. He didn't really do much as far as containing the passing game. There was one specific play. I believe it was Sammy Watkins' touchdown play. It was either Sammy Watkins' touchdown play or one of Robert Woods' touchdown plays, where DRC gets pretty much, it was a blown coverage, but the miscommunication between the safety and the cornerback was pretty intense, because DRC was lined up on the outside, but he was looking at the inside receiver, so I think he was expecting that safety help to come down and cover the edge, and he didn't, and so it was pretty much Sammy Watkins was a free runner for that touchdown, and the look on their faces was pretty funny. And it's not even to say that the Giants don't have defensive talent, because they do. They're just kind of lost in the void right now.
Right. They have defensive talent, but it feels like it's thin.
Yeah, they have like those 2 or 3 key players in key positions, but they just can't bring it all together.
Philly-Denver, the one game that I actually watched and then proceeded to not make any notes for, so this is actually just going to be off memory, so I'm sure it'll go great.
So what do you remember about it then? Put you in the hot seat.
I feel like I remember feeling like Philadelphia's offense got a lot of help from things that weren't their offense.
Man, it's almost like we've been saying that all fucking season.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect example of, because especially looking at the 2 games we're looking at side by side between Philly and the Rams, the Rams had 300 plus passing yards. They had decent production running the ball, versus the Philadelphia Eagles, where the running game is pretty similar, but Jay Ajayi had a big chunk yardage play that helped out his stats. Corey Clement is really coming into his own as a rookie, but he's still limiting touches, especially because they're now officially sharing carries between 4 running backs. But then you have Carson Wentz that was barely over 50%, and had just under 200 yards, but yet he still threw 4 touchdowns. That doesn't happen without help. So we're right back to square one, where last week I was like, hey, this was kind of the Eagles game I've been waiting on, and then you have this week where, okay, so let's see what the Eagles can do if they push the field. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that they still put up 51 points on a very good defense.
Yep.
Even if those were defensive in nature, but Philly's defense scored no touchdowns.
Yeah.
So at least that 51 points came from the offense. Like we've been saying, when you're setting up in your opponent's red zone for almost every one of your drives, doesn't really make it too difficult.
No, and especially when after the first one, even that mental fatigue starts to set in with the defense, where they just get this mindset of like, okay, well, there's points on the board.
Right.
And then after that, it's like, all right, well, can we stop these guys? All they've got to get is, 20 or fewer yards. Mm-hmm. And then you have to do it again and again and again.
Right.
And you just, you don't want to do that anymore. It's like, all right, fucking whatever.
And there is so much time that you're taking away from your defense ability to rest when you're unable to get the ball down the field, and when you have 2 turnovers and you're punting. If you look at their drives, you had 3 and out, interception, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So they're not holding on to the ball nearly long enough, and they're constantly giving Eagles either short field position or advantageous field position around the 50, and your defense is getting no rest, and the Eagles are loaded with weapons. They don't have to rely on 1 or 2 guys. It's just going to spell bad news for you when you can't get a team like that off the field.
Yeah, when you're going against someone who can legitimately put a fresh running back in every single down.
Yeah, and that's
if they wanted to.
And exactly, and that's one of the things that scared me when Jay Ajayi got traded to Philly. This was pretty much exactly why I said that trading Jay Ajayi was the dumbest thing Miami could have done for quote-unquote punishment, because
he gets his first touchdown on the season. He also leads the team in rushing yards for this game. Also in efficiency. And he doesn't even have to play every snap to do it. It's not punishment. He almost broke 100 yards on 8 carries. Yeah, he actually only has the 3rd most carries. Both Corey Clement and LeGarrette Blount have more carries than him.
Right. He had the 3rd most carries, but the most rushing yards. The entire team ran for almost 200 yards rushing, so not only is he going to benefit from not having to play every single time, also playing in a system that values the running game.
Yeah, or it's going to be like, hey, Jay, we're going to run it. Get out there. And then Jay's going to be like, yeah, put LeGarrette in for the blocking downs. If I could just stand over here and not have to do that.
Right.
Great.
So you get a run by committee that kind of has a new flavor to it. You don't have to sacrifice your big, beefy running backs as also on all the blocking plays, so you can keep them fresh. And then you have Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood that are your kind of tighter, smaller running backs that kind of weasel into those spots you don't need your big guys trying to go bumbling through. And you just get so much freshness out of this running game that you're going to see games like this where nobody had a super crazy game. There was definitely rushing efficiency, but they still, rushed for almost 200 yards. And on a team that was already benefiting from a strong rushing game, that was like the worst thing Miami could have done.
Philadelphia looks really good at this point. And I think watching them play and watching them dominate the way that they did, because I think it's mostly... It's still Russian roulette to a degree, because like the Bills saw this week, there's going to be that week where something's just off and you end up giving up 3 turnovers and the opposing team doesn't give up any. And it's what's going to beat the Eagles at some point when they don't have field position, because the thing that we haven't really seen from them in a long time is them actually driving a field.
Right. And that's something that I got excited to see last week, where there was actually production from the offense starting in their own field position, to where we could get a look at how their offense can kind of function when they have the entire stretch of field in front of them. Because trust me, we've seen enough of the Eagles in the red zone or the Eagles in short field. From 50 yards on, I've seen the Eagles, and I know they're good. I know they can put points on the board. But I want to know, are they that good when a number 1, number 2, number 3 defense has them pushed against the goal line? Those are going to be the moments that are going to define whether or not they make it out of the NFC, or even if they make it out of the division in the playoffs. Because the Eagles are going to go to the playoffs. This is something that's going to happen. Their division is wildly obtuse right now. You have one of the worst teams.
It's underperforming. I mean, again, we were, like you kept saying, is at the beginning of the season, we thought the Giants were supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and Dallas last year was 14-2. So even if the Eagles were incredible,
right? They played 6 of their games are against these 3 opponents. So all they have to do is make it out of those opponents, and
right? And
then they can win the division and go to the playoffs.
Yeah, and this year the Eagles are playing incredibly well, and the other teams in their division are just wildly underperforming. You know, and the Redskins are kind of middling and are sort of on an upswing at the moment.
Yeah, they're one of those. They're one of my coin flip teams, as I like to call them.
Okay, so up next we've got the Falcons and the Panthers. The NFC South clashes against itself once more, and the Falcons are kind of they don't look like the team that went to the Super Bowl last year.
They certainly don't, and it's painful, because the Falcons were one of my more favorite teams to watch last year, just because they were crazy putting up points on the board, and their defense was so, good with the defending and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the defense,
but it's like you said, it's not turning out that way this season, which a lot of people actually predicted. I was trying to be devil's advocate, benefit of the doubt kind of person, where it's like, hey, no, they went to the Super Bowl, but then they didn't really change anything from last year, and it's not even like they were super crazy good last year either, because when they lost, they lost. They just had a very, very good string of games up into the Super Bowl, obviously threw up the playoffs. But my biggest thing from this game was this is like the catch Hurd Brown the world for me, because Julio Jones dropping a wide open pass in the end zone that could have potentially swung the game. Like, Julio Jones doesn't drop passes like that.
No.
And it was hilarious when it happened, not because he dropped the pass, but because it was like a double move go route. He just fucking took off and completely uncovered, wide open the end zone. Matt Ryan drops it perfectly in stride into his hands. And as he's bringing it into his body, it bounces off of his chest. So he goes to the ground with it, trying to keep it in. And as the ball is tipping away from his body, you can see the moment, the split second when he gave up trying to get the ball. Because there was no way he was going to get the reception at this point. Because he goes completely limp and just slides face first in the turf through the end zone. And just sits there and lies face first and then just covers his fucking head with his hands. When you see it in replay, you just see his arms kick out to the side, and you can just tell in his face, or in his mind, he's just like, I can't believe I just fucking did that. And I was laughing so hard when I saw it in slow motion, and I felt so bad.
It's the anime moment.
Yeah, pretty much, it was. This game was so strange for me. Cam Newton had a good game on the ground, but
dude, how are you winning games when your top running back is your quarterback?
Yeah, Devin Funchess had a decent game, and Christian McCaffrey had his first rushing touchdown of the year, but dude, the Panthers offense did not look good.
No, 13 for 24 is really bad as a quarterback.
It's really bad as a quarterback, and it's not even like turnovers killed Atlanta Falcons. They only lost a fumble, and Matt Ryan threw a pick, but it wasn't like there was some kind of crazy turnover differential to kind of supplement the numbers that the Falcons were putting up. The Falcons were putting up decent numbers on offense. They just could not get the ball in the end zone.
Well, yeah, and their running game looks like it was really struggling. When Devontae Freeman only has 46 yards, I've seen him and Coleman go off for 150 together or more.
Oh, absolutely. So
they really need to do something. But yeah, also not being able to find the end zone doesn't help.
Yeah, their interception was, I think, 2 plays into a drive, which gave the Panthers short field pretty early in the game, and they were able to score off of that, which put the Panthers in the lead going into the half. And then after halftime, there was pretty much after the first quarter, Atlanta just had no offense, They were completing passes and the ball was getting moved downfield, but you started seeing a lot of 3 and outs, some turnovers on downs that got converted for points. Atlanta Falcons head coach, he's ballsy. He will go for it because fuck it. There was one drive specifically where they were like 4th and 1.
Yeah,
on like the 50-yard line, and Devontae Freeman got stuffed in the backfield.
Yeah, they had 4:30 left in the first half to go.
Yeah, and then the Panthers turned around and scored on that.
Yep.
And then that was when the Falcons turned around and threw a 2-play interception that the Panthers turned around and scored on again. So it was stuff like that really killed them. Going 11 plays, like a 6-minute drive just to have it turned over on downs and then have the Panthers march down 50 yards in 2 minutes and then get a pick and then do it again right before halftime.
They were aided on that pick by a pretty hefty return on that interception.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that return came back, like 40 yards or some shit?
Yeah, something ridiculous.
That's a pretty rough string of drives to go into halftime with. And then to come out of halftime with the inability to move the ball downfield again, So it really sucks that when you look at the numbers, you'll look at the offensive production between these two teams and be like, yo, why the fuck didn't the Falcons win? Because even with 50 yards rushing, I've seen that out of an offense Matt Ryan was running before.
Yeah. Well, I think in this case we might actually know why they lost.
Oh, I know why they lost. I'm just saying if you just look at the box score.
And I think Julio Jones might have known it a little bit quicker than the rest of us.
Absolutely. That was the game. It really was. That drop coupled with the interception and the flub from the first half, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
But when you look at the score and you look at the box score, they're telling two different stories, The box score is saying, hey, those touchdowns and that field goal that Atlanta got, they worked for those. But when you look at the line score, it's just like, where the hell did these 2 touchdowns go or come from in the second quarter from Carolina? Because I don't see anybody on here that has the capability of scoring a touchdown.
Right.
Devin Funchess, probably the only bright spot of that offense.
So I was actually going to ask you exactly that. Now that Kelvin Benjamin's off the team, how do we feel? Was this enough out of Funchess? Does he specifically need to do more? Is this team, in that much worse of a place without Kelvin Benjamin?
I don't think so. Because Devin Funchess did exactly what you'd expect out of a number one. He was 17 yards per attempt. He was 5 receptions on 7 targets. He was a target for Cam Newton. Where the fuck was everyone else? Only 4 other people caught the ball on this team. So, do I expect more from him? No. Will he have to give us more for Carolina to maintain the level of production that they're maintaining as far as wins go? Absolutely, because he's not getting any help. Kelvin Benjamin was his help.
I think only 2 other people caught the ball on that team.
Yeah, only 2 other people caught the ball. Yeah, and
4 people got targets.
Targeted. Yeah. Versus, if you look at over on a good offensive side like the Falcons. You have Julio Jones, who had a surprisingly, quote-unquote, inefficient day, but like I said, a lot of those were errant throws that just happened to be in Julio's direction. Some of them were throwaways because, Matt Ryan was pressured a fair bit. But, Taylor Gabriel had an average game for himself. Austin Hooper had a game that you'd expect from him. Mohamed Sanu is actually kind of quiet, but he still had 3 targets. Yeah. There was people that Matt Ryan could flick the ball around onto to where Julio Jones just bared most of the weight because we'd expect that from him. It's Julio Jones.
Right.
But when you only have 3 people that can catch a ball on this offense and you still win the football game, that's not supposed to happen.
No.
To say we expect more from Devin Funchess, I say I'd expect more from former MVP Cam Newton.
Oh, I mean, certainly.
To get the ball to somebody that isn't Devin Funchess and Christian McCaffrey. Because before Kelvin Benjamin got traded, the only people he ever threw the fucking ball to was Kelvin Benjamin, Devin Funchess, and Christian McCaffrey. Lord help them when they get Greg Olsen back.
Carolina won that game kind of in spite of themselves, I think is the general summation for this.
Yeah, it's pretty appropriate.
So moving on, we've got the cat fight of the week.
That's cute.
With the Bengals versus the Jags.
Yep.
And is Jacksonville a team? Question mark.
Look, this is a question we ask every fucking week because we don't know what Jacksonville is going to show up. We just don't. Fortunately for us this week, it was a Jacksonville that Blake Bortles didn't look like butt.
Is Cincinnati bad again?
Cincinnati has been bad. They just had a couple of good games.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Andy Dalton happened to be against the Bills. God damn it.
Andy Dalton's booty. He's doing booty stuff. It didn't help that his best receiver got thrown out of the game, like literally a quarter into it.
You want to just talk about that first?
Yeah,
just get it out of the way.
Can we only just talk about that? Because it's the only thing to talk about in this game.
Well, I was going to say Marcel Darius played in this game, so he's down in Jacksonville now. That probably helped them a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Marquise Lee still played really well.
Yep.
He's someone I had not previously paid attention to, but catching highlights for a few of his games, he's definitely stood out, especially in the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
Finally got his first touchdown this week.
The rushing game definitely helped out Blake Bortles, take some weight off of him.
Yeah, the Jags returned a punt for 63 yards.
Yeah,
for a touchdown. So
that punt return was nuts. Forgot all about that.
Yeah, but yes, let's talk about AJ Green.
Yeah, so AJ Green and Jalen Ramsey were like mouthing off at each other all game, right? But by all game, I mean like 5 minutes. It's literally been 5 minutes into this game, and finally, like, a play happens, and then Jalen Ramsey like pushes AJ Green's shoulder, and AJ Green, instead of just going like getting in his face and going, "Hey, motherfucker," he like does his best George St. Pierre impression and tries to choke out Jalen Ramsey right there in the middle of the field. So of course there's all this commotion when Jalen Ramsey hits the ground and tries to spin out of it. AJ Green stands up and starts throwing punches. Like, this is one thing that I don't understand about fighting in the NFL. Okay, I get it. When testosterone gets flared, people are talking shit, fights are going to happen. But you are punching someone that has encased their head in a piece of plastic.
And their chest.
And their chests. And they're basically almost every part of their body is padded and or protected in some way, shape, or form. And you are balling up your fist and punching at it.
Or it's their arms or legs, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, at least if you're hitting their arms and legs, that would make sense.
Yeah.
He tried to punch him in the face. Like, what would have happened? How stupid would AJ Green would have felt if he would have balled up his fist, punched Jalen Ramsey in his face, and just shattered all of his fucking knuckles across Jalen Ramsey's face mask?
I'm pretty sure somebody's done that. Well, I mean, Geno Smith broke his hand directly on Ike Unupale's jaw, so that was pretty awesome. And then Rex Ryan picked him up after he got kicked off the Jets for breaking Geno Smith's hand.
Right.
With his jaw.
With his jaw. But
apparently Geno Smith owed him money.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have your best receiver got kicked out of the game like 5 minutes into the game for some dumb shit. And, like, I'm not saying Jalen Ramsey was completely absolved of his involvement because he was being a dickhead too. He got ejected too. But, like, it always just astounded me why football players try to punch people in pads, and they always aim for the fucking head. They're wearing helmets, bro. Like, at least in hockey, they take the helmets off before they start swinging.
Well, no, they usually don't. But they will often take their gloves off.
Yeah, they certainly do take the gloves off.
And, you know, basically they're wearing big sweatshirts, not, you know, hard plastic under jerseys. So,
sure.
And a lot of times those motherfuckers get ripped off too. So
yeah. I mean, that's part of hockey. You pull the jersey over the head and just start aiming for the gut, and then you catch them in the face as they're coming back up, you know. But
so, at least in those fights, it makes more sense. Yep. They have a plan of attack.
Sure. And then after he throws a couple of punches, then, you know, he rolls back down on the Jalen Ramsey, tries to choke him out again. So, of course, you know, a Jaguar comes out of nowhere and just completely blindside pops AJ Green, which at this point, he fucking deserved it.
Yeah.
And then you know, the benches are clearing and everybody's getting tore up in the middle of it, and then like AJ Green is walking away, taking his helmet off and talking shit. And what kills me about this though is AJ Green is not known for his explosive personality. You know, he's never had a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty or anything like that. He's had one, and that was for scoring a touchdown and kicking the football into the crowd. He got in sportsmanlike conduct. But he's never penalized like this. He doesn't have outbursts like this. So I want to know what the fuck Jalen Ramsey was saying to him, because Jalen Ramsey is known for talking shit, and Jalen Ramsey has made an impression in his short time in the NFL as a very, 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 very good corner. So I want to know what he was saying to A.J. Green to really get under his skin like that. Because that might be the secret to why Jalen Ramsey's so good.
Just all head games?
Just all head game. But he chose the head game with, pretty much a ticking time bomb. Because A.J. Green doesn't do this shit.
Yeah. Well, that and he turned around and pushed him, so that probably
that also
doesn't help.
Yeah, that doesn't help. But after A.J. Green got ejected, that was pretty much the entirety of Cincinnati's offense got ejected with him.
Right.
And like Tyler Kroft has been doing well standing in tight end position, but Andy Dalton threw 18 passes this game in a game that they were handily losing. And that tells me one thing and one thing only. They didn't get the ball very much.
No. Jacksonville almost 80 plays altogether.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yeah, there was not much opportunity for the Bengals to even attempt offense.
That's, let's say, more than double what Cincinnati had.
Yep, that's time of possession. Time of possession is an important stat in the NFL. A lot of people overlook it. But you had a decent outing from Blake Bortles. You had a decent outing from the running game. And when you hold on to the ball that long and your defense performs as well as it did, and then you also score a touchdown from the punt return.
Yeah, doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, no complaints from Jaguars.
All those things are good.
Yep. So I think it's a little bit of Jaguars being a quote-unquote good team, but a lot of bit of Cincinnati being a bad team, and A.J. Green making a poor decision. One of the rare times he does it in his career.
So if I told you at the beginning of this season that Houston would basically be tied for last with Indianapolis in the division, and that Jacksonville and Tennessee would be tied for first at the halfway point, what would you have said?
At the beginning of the season?
Yeah.
The Jaguars being up there wouldn't have surprised me. Because short of Blake Bortles, I've always thought that the Jaguars have been building up to something.
Yeah, they're definitely most of the way there, it feels like.
Right, but the Texans being in a bum fight for the bottom, that would be definitely surprising to me if they were the beginning of the season.
Speaking of that bum fight, let's talk about it.
It was actually a bum fight that happened.
Yeah, it's actually this week, the Colts and the Texans, and the Colts take this out to basically put them in that evened out position 1 week after Deshaun Watson, or I guess technically the same week Deshaun Watson tore his ACL, because that was on Thursday.
Yep, a non-contact torn ACL in practice. But this game in particular really showed how much Deshaun Watson was really bringing to the table for the offense of the Houston Texans. We're talking about an offense that routinely scored, 25, 30 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, 14 points.
Yeah. Basically, you look at these stats, and I look at the wide receivers, and I see DeAndre Hopkins. Well, okay, all right. I didn't see the targets just quite yet. 6 receptions on 16 targets is really bad. I was going to say, 6 receptions, 86 yards. He just seems like a muted version of himself. And then you see the 10 misses.
Yeah, you got to understand, Tom Savage was playing quarterback in this game.
Yeah,
and he went 19 for 44.
So the running game didn't really help. They kind of chipped in a little bit, but other than that, yeah, Houston doesn't have a quarterback anymore. Houston, you have a problem.
That is the truth, and unfortunately, we didn't realize how much of a downgrade it would have been from Deshaun Watson to Tom Savage, although we did have a general idea because Tom Savage was not good, but we didn't expect Deshaun Watson to be so good.
So I think there's one important thing to take away from this.
Uh-huh.
We've seen Deshaun Watson play this season up until this Thursday.
Yes.
And he's been playing well. Their schedule didn't really reflect it. Oh, I said this last weekend, and you agreed with me that they, basically are better than their record says.
Absolutely.
They don't deserve to be a 3-4 team going into this game.
Right.
They deserve to be a 3-5 team coming out of it.
Absolutely. No, with Tom Savage, when Tom Savage at the helm, they're not a playoff team. Their
But
season's done.
We've seen Deshaun Watson play incredibly well.
Absolutely.
And we know that he is now pretty much a known quantity, and so long as his, knee doesn't plague him for the rest of his career or something, as long as he rehabs it correctly, we as the Texans in this case are pretty confident in him coming back next year.
Absolutely.
We're also, again, 3-5. Maybe it's time we just pack it in with no J.J. Watt and...
Yeah, I would say at this point, protect your assets, get them healthy, and go for a good draft pick.
Yeah, don't get DeAndre Hopkins hurt at this point.
Yeah, like start limiting his role a wee bit. I mean, play to win, but don't do anything stupid.
Yeah,
because you're
still in pretty prime position to get like a top 5, top 10 pick.
Right, and you're not going to play premier football with Tom Savage playing quarterback.
Now let me tell you about a guy named Colin Kaepernick.
Here we go.
No. Jacoby Brissett.
No, he's too busy suing the NFL currently, so...
Yeah, you probably do both, right? Jacoby Brissett looked not terrible in this game, I think is the best way to describe him.
He hasn't really looked not terrible all season.
Yeah.
He's been decent.
Yeah. Although, T.Y. Hilton, man, did he have a night.
Oh, yeah. T.Y. Hilton, still, one of the better receivers in the league.
5 receptions on 9 targets, not great. Kind of would like to do more with that. But you really can't complain about 175 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Nope. Even if you take the chunk yard play away, he still had almost 100 yards receiving.
Well, yeah, it's because he had, I think, more than one of those.
Yeah.
I think both of his touchdowns were like an 80 and a 50-yarder or something like that.
Yeah. Dude stretches the field, man.
Yeah, that guy can run. And we were talking about him a couple weeks ago, I remember, basically not showing up, and we were mostly putting it on Brissett, but it seems like T.Y. Hilton can still get it done. He's always still a threat to hit that home run. He's just got to be on it.
Absolutely.
But speaking of teams who don't have quarterbacks, let's move on to Arizona and San Francisco and C.J. Beathard and Drew Stanton. Who are these people?
Who are you people?
What is happening to quarterbacks in the league this year?
Even the bad ones
that we knew, like Brian Hoyer, are on other teams.
Yep. Going all back to play for the Pats.
So, anyways, in the fucking Guess Who Bowl, we've got 2 quarterbacks who can hit their targets about half the time.
Yeah. But fortunately for Arizona, you don't have to throw the ball every time because you have Adrian Peterson going the fuck off.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson went kind of nuts. It's kind of the big thing I have highlighted for this. 159 yards. That's pretty good.
Yeah, with a career-high carries, too. So obviously they're going to shoulder the load a little bit more on the running game with Carson Palmer being out.
Yeah, what an incredible swing at this point for the Cardinals to, right before your quarterback goes down, pull Adrian Peterson for basically nothing off of a team that wasn't utilizing him. And now it's like, oh, well, we're just a run-first team now.
Right. Fuck it.
So that's what we're going to do.
I'm sure Larry Fitz is fine with that. He's been carrying this offense for 3 seasons now.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I think he'd still rather have 100 yards a game, but...
Yeah, but I think he'll be okay with 70.
Yeah.
Look, he's pretty much going to waltz his way into a gold jacket. He doesn't need any help.
Pretty much. Yeah. I think that's pretty safe to say. But yeah. And then San Francisco continues to not win any games. So guess what? They're actually worse at winning games than you are now, technically.
Yep. Because we're 0-8, baby.
They're half a game worse than you are.
Which means technically they hold the number 1 pick in the league right now, baby.
Yeah.
Because we're only the 2nd worst team in the NFL. That's 2 wins for Cleveland. A, we didn't lose, and B, we're not the most terrible anymore.
We're not the worst.
We're not the worst.
But yeah, I kind of got nothing to say about this game. It's pretty much, hey, look, AP can rush.
Hey, look, that's literally the only thing that happened. The rest of the game was kind of stupid and boring.
Yeah, against a team that
was stupid and boring.
Isn't I don't think the Niners are particularly known for their run defense at this point.
I don't think they're particularly known for their any defense at this point, or else they would have won a football game by now.
That's entirely fair.
Yeah. Although I say that with Cleveland having a top 10 defense, and we haven't won a game either.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The NFL is weird.
The NFL is weird. Speaking of weird, let's talk about the Redskins and Seattle and how weird it is to see that many missed field goals.
That many missed field goals, and how I think that's the longest I've ever seen a team have only 2 points.
Yeah, the Dan Carpenter honorary award for, oh my God, please hit a field goal.
Yeah, I don't think Blair Walsh didn't hit a single one, did he?
No, he did not.
No, he didn't. He did not. Man.
Remember the other week when you were like, hey, how many field goals did Tampa Bay miss? Guess what? Same story.
Yeah, and guess what? That could have totally been them winning a game.
That would have been them winning the game because they lost the game by 3 points.
Yep, and 3 field goals is 9 points. I can math.
Yep, you math good.
I math good.
You know who doesn't math good? Seattle. And also that dude's paycheck. That dude's paycheck math's very bad right now.
So, but we did see some good things from this game. One of those being Doug Baldwin almost broke the ever-loving shit out of Josh Norman's ankles, and I laughed so hard because I hate Josh Norman. So, pretty much, Doug Baldwin was lined up in the slot. Josh Norman was pressing him, and Josh Norman went to go for a stab, went to pin him at the line. And Doug Baldwin pretty much does like the world's sexiest swim move and pretty much just dumps him at the line of scrimmage and breaks open in the end zone for a touchdown. And I love seeing plays like that because Josh Norman doesn't know how to shut his mouth.
That's true.
So when a good receiver makes him look silly, I just kind of chuckle inside. But beyond that, there wasn't anything terribly exciting going in this football game.
Well, so I got a question to ask
Sure.
Seattle.
Okay.
How do they think they're going to win a game when their quarterback's their top running back?
Look, it works for Cam.
I guess. I guess Russell has a ring and Cam does not. So.
That is true. And Russell Wilson has a ring playing the way he did on Sunday. Yeah. They've definitely tried over the past couple of years
by getting a ton of yards on a really inefficient passing number.
Yes.
He's like a tiny Brett Favre. I think that's the thing that I've learned about Russell Wilson is he's a tiny mobile Brett Favre.
Yeah. Well, he's always had a defense that he can lean on. Like when the ball gets turned over, he has a defense that he can lean on to where it won't really affect him too terribly negatively.
Hey, Sherm, go get that back for me.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, hey, Legion of Boom, I need you to that's mine. Give me my toy back. Hey, Dad, go give me my toy back.
Yeah. I kicked the ball over the fence into the bad neighbor's yard. Go get it back.
Right. And then, Russell Wilson having the athleticism he does, he can create plays with his legs, and that's one of the most difficult things about the dude is you can't stop him. Or shit.
Right.
If you give him too much time in the pocket, he will find the open receiver. If you put too much pressure on him, he'll find the gap and run, So you start running into that Vic scenario. The difference being is the part of the offense where the scoring of the points needed to happen wasn't really going on for Seattle.
No.
The defense started off with a strong start, pretty much flattening Kirk Cousins in the end zone for a safety, but that was literally the only points they scored for the next 3 quarters.
Yeah, starting off with also the Redskins starting off the game by fumbling on the first possession. Then Seattle drove, didn't get anything done, and then turned around and got that safety on Cousins. Great start to the game.
Yeah.
There was one other thing that I saw that would have definitely changed the game up, which was Jimmy Graham at the end of the game ended up dropping a possible touchdown.
Yeah, I did see that.
So, big name players not making the big name plays to cost their teams games. Apparently a thing this week to a certain degree.
Yeah, Blair Walsh.
What's up with bird teams and dropping winning touchdowns in the end zone? All right, so let's move on now to Kansas City and Dallas in one of the games I would say is still containing 2 of the more powerhouse teams in the league, especially when Ezekiel Elliott is still allowed to play. Keith, why is Ezekiel Elliott still allowed to play?
Because there are judges in the world that don't believe in justice.
So didn't you tell me last week that we weren't going to see him until December?
That's what I was told. Look, man, as long as there's a judge on the planet that are still willing to overturn these other judgments that the other judges are making, it's like it's not even about Ezekiel Elliott anymore. It's about two judges on opposite sides of the country like yelling at each other about this guy that they don't really care about.
I guess.
And it's frustrating. Like, just serve your time, man. Go away. Like, you have gotten this thing turned over so many. It's turning into the Deflategate again. And he's going to serve that suspension. It's just going to be next year after he wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So that's about half of my notes, which was have Keith tell me why Zeke is able to play.
If you want an actual answer, I have no fucking idea.
So he's back, and he's still good. I don't know why I'm frustrated, like, at him. I think I'm just more frustrated by the situation as a whole and the fact that he is, like, drawing it out.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why he is, because they have a good team, and they want to win football games and all that fun stuff, and they put themselves in an opportunity to do something good last season, and they want to replicate. I get it.
I hope this just pushes enough games for them to, like, definitely make the playoffs, but then he has to sit out the playoffs.
I would cry. I would laugh so hard.
So it's like,
I'm almost willing to pay somebody to make it happen.
Congratulations, now we pull the rug out from under you. Except at this point, like, they have to either be a wild card, which I guess they could still pull off, or, you know, have a better record than the Eagles, which is really unlikely at this point.
Right.
So, I don't know. We'll see where that goes. Zeke was back. He was fairly efficient. Most of the running game didn't quite break 100 yards. Dak Prescott, also fairly efficient. 2 touchdowns. Terrence Williams had an unbelievable night.
Oh, absolutely.
9 receptions on 9 targets for 141 yards. Pretty good.
Yeah, Terrence Williams is one of those receivers where he has those nights. Like, he's always consistent. He always 3 or 4 grabs, 30, 40 yards, and then he has like 1 or 2 games a season where he just blows the fuck up.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a reflection on Dez Bryant, though, because we haven't seen a lot from Dez Bryant this season.
I was going to say, I feel like this is another week where we're looking at Dez and just being like, hey, buddy, you
plan on playing football this week? Like,
you don't quite look like you. It's Dez Bryant in a Snickers commercial where it's like, have a Snickers, Dez. You don't play like yourself when you're hungry.
Meh.
So yeah, he's been, I don't know, underwhelming as far as Dez Bryant is concerned. On the flip side, we see Travis Kelce continuing to be Travis Kelce as hell.
Like I said, if it wasn't for Gronk, even with Gronk at this point, I think we agreed last week, like even with Gronk in the league, Travis Kelce's still the best tight end in the league.
I think he's got a real strong case at this point.
Yep. Gronk can't stay healthy. Travis Kelce's the one that's consistently putting up numbers. And he's just so fucking fun to watch play football.
Yeah, he's a big, goofy guy. To be fair, Gronk is also a big, goofy guy. But
yeah, and they're both loudmouths, and they're awesome. I like watching them both play. As much as I hate Gronk, I still like to watch him play.
Yeah. Alex Smith, decent game, 25 for 34, 263. 2 touchdowns and an interception.
I think the big takeaway from this game is Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, kind of not doing anything. Kind of a real quiet game from him.
Yeah, I think, and this is last week I think he was just barely under 100 yards from scrimmage. This was the first game of the season where he was definitively, I would say compared to his previous outings, this was like the first game he was definitely definitively shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, obviously you can tell it made a lot of impact in their offense. Kareem Hunt has pretty much established himself as a feature player in that offense.
Right. So Kansas City's 9 games in at this point. Do you think Kareem Hunt's starting to hit the rookie wall?
God, it's possible. I think
because if he is, at least he's got the upside of going into next week having their bye.
Yeah.
So he'll have a little bit of time to recover, but this may. Yeah, do you think this is a tipping point to something further down the road? Like this is going to be where he basically starts to run flat.
I certainly hope not, because then I would hate to have to deal him on my fantasy team.
Okay, there it is.
But I will, damn it.
I think this is the longest we've made it without any fantasy talk on one of these.
No, I already talked about it with the Bengals.
You're right. But yeah, this seemed like a game where Dallas just was able to consistently put points up on the board, and Kansas City just kind of wasn't.
Dallas was almost like the measuring stick of efficiency. If there was a quarter, there was a touchdown.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those weird things where I look at it and I'm like, man, they put up 28 points. How did they do that? And it's just 7, 7, 7, 7. And it's one of those things that you get reminded of like, if you can just once a quarter score a touchdown, you put up enough points to win most games.
Absolutely. And saying it like that makes it sound so easy.
Although 28 points still wouldn't have won our game, but
it would have been closer.
So yeah, Dallas still playing fairly well, and like, what's going on with the Chiefs? Are we on a full decline now? Is Kareem Hunt actually that important to completely sway the Chiefs' fate like that?
No and no.
Okay.
I'm not backing off of the Chiefs yet. They've only lost 3 games. They've lost 3 games to 3 difficult opponents.
Sure. I did still say that the Dallas Cowboys were one of the teams that the Eagles are going to have to prove themselves against, and I think that still holds true at this point. But branching from one AFC West team to another, let's talk about the Raiders and them winning a game.
Raiders.
Let's talk about the Raiders like only being 2 games behind Kansas City at this point.
Yeah, dude, the Raiders are, they're making a swing. They're trying to recover from losing Derek Carr, going on that slide.
Let's talk about Marshawn Lynch showing up and putting points on the board.
Hell yeah, boy. We got to see Beast Mode do Beast Mode stuff, and that's all I've wanted.
And then, yeah, Derek Carr, pretty decent. Jay Cutler still being asked to do a lot on the other hand, though.
Yeah, and it's going to be even more so when you ship off your number 1 running back to the future NFC champions because he talks too much. Yeah, it was nice to see Marshawn Lynch being able to do Marshawn Lynch stuff. I still don't think they're featuring him enough, but in this game they didn't really have to because Derek Carr didn't really have to do much either. It was just overall a relatively efficient game on both sides of the ball for Oakland.
Yeah, Jared Cook certainly having a day of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Over 100 yards receiving on 8 receptions on 9 targets. Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree actually kind of quiet. And Amari Cooper continuing to have this real consistency problem this season.
Yeah, it's starting to, and I think that because we expected the Oakland Raiders' offense coming into this league, or this season rather, to be, one of the offenses to watch in the AFC because
right.
You had weapons like Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, Jared Cook, and then bringing in Marshawn Lynch in the offseason and all these people, and we're consistently seeing inconsistency, and it's really part of the problem why Oakland's in the deficit they're in now as far as the division rankings go, as well as losing your starting quarterback for 2 weeks. But we're a couple weeks removed from Derek Carr being out from his back injury, and we're still seeing these inconsistencies. So when some people may or may not have thought that the inconsistency may have been due to like the quarterback switch or what have you. Sure, they won this week and they're on the upturn and stuff, but the AFC is still a rough conference. And a win over the Miami Dolphins at this point when you were supposed to be running the AFC and only beating the Miami Dolphins by 3 points against Jay Cutler and a team with what some would consider no feature back anymore.
Yeah, no real feature back and a couple of wide receivers.
Yeah, like Jarvis Landry and Kenny Stills can only do so much.
Right.
Fortunately for them, Julius Thomas is pretty much a guarantee. And Devontae Parker had a really good game this week, but don't expect that week in, week out.
Yeah, Devontae Parker's been showing up in fits and starts from what I've seen.
Yeah, Devontae Parker is definitely took after the school of Odell and Jarvis for this week, which was cool to see.
Yeah.
Where he was a solid possession receiver with sick-ass one-handed catches.
But yeah, all that being said, Oakland picks up a win on the road, which is never an easy thing to do.
Absolutely not.
And helps out my chances of making it into the playoffs by beating Miami. Thanks, guys. I like seeing Miami lose. And thusly, we are on to our last game of this week, Detroit and Green Bay, the game in which we have Matthew Stafford and some guy. Some guy was hanging out with the other two some guys, but they had to go play their own game, so he had to play a real quarterback.
Yep, and that was pretty much the tale of how this game went down. Not that Brett Hundley did terrible.
No. But Matthew Stafford did real good.
But Matthew Stafford did real good, while Brett Hundley is obviously in a very neutered offense right now. He was pretty much check down king that entire game.
Yeah. I think that accurately describes it.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, when you're only throwing for 6 yards an attempt.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, 2 wide receivers over 100 yards. Pretty good.
Yep. And Golden Tate doing Golden Tate stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he leads the league. In his period of time for playing, he leads the league in yards after catch.
Yep.
When you see...
And that's not even counting the ones where he goes horizontal. Those yards don't count. They only count the forward and back yards.
Right, and how he creates those forward and back yards are by utilizing those horizontal yards. The dude is quick, and anytime you see a big breakout game from him, you never see that big, like, explosive 80-yard run unless he caught it like 5 yards out, broke 2 tackles, and then ran 80 yards. You know,
right?
He's not a big vertical guy. But Marvin Jones is, and Marvin Jones also got 100 yards.
Yeah.
And 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And both of those touchdowns were pretty much, soft touch passes into the end zone that he had to get up there and get, like be that big red zone threat receiver. This is a guy that's shown up for, at least in this game, showed up for the Lions as that target to have in the red zone. He's 6'2", almost 200 pounds. Not the hugest guy in the world, but he can climb the ladder.
Right. I was going to say Detroit receiving absolutely showed out for this game.
Yep. It was nice to see some decent play out of the backfield with the Lions never really having like a feature back. But they were able to put the ball in the backfield just enough to kind of take a little bit of pressure off of Matthew Stafford, and then that pretty much opened the floodgates for Matt Stafford, man, dropping dimes.
Yeah, I would say their rush game largely looks like it was used to eat clock and punch it into the end zone.
Yeah, it was stuff like, hey, let's use this to kind of set up the play action or to test this coverage or something like that,
Right.
And then, like you said, we're in the red zone or let's chew a little bit of clock or something like that. Besides that, there's a reason why Matthew Stafford's the highest paid quarterback in the league.
Right. And then on the other side, unfortunately, we have the Green Bay Packers who are suffering from the loss of Aaron Rodgers, and that's kind of all you got to say about their game. Couldn't really get anything going rushing, and when you lose your MVP caliber quarterback,
who was having an MVP caliber season up to his injury.
Yeah, it's not great. And that's kind of a deflating tone to end that on. Do we have anything else we want to talk about this week?
There's a couple of things.
Okay. I'm ready for it. This is the one part I haven't prepared for because I don't have shit to talk about.
Okay. Well, you know how last week we talked about Josh Gordon being reinstated?
Yes.
He showed up to the Browns facility today.
Uh-huh.
So there's some things going on.
And they were like, no.
God, I hope not. Haven't gotten that far yet. But he recently had a article for QQ Magazine.
Uh-huh.
Where he did pretty much a expose or like a no-holds-barred interview thing. He pretty much stated that he hasn't played a football game since college where he's been sober. Like in the actual game.
Uh-huh.
Either high and or drunk playing football. Even during his 1,600-yard season. He also put the entire league on blast. He was just like, yeah, I know plenty of people in the league that do it, but we're talking about me right now. It's just like, oh, shit.
Sure.
Oh, shit. Which, I mean, I don't doubt, and I'm sure nobody else does either. But it was a really cool read. It was a good interview. I'm going to post it on the Facebook and stuff. Obviously, it should already be up there by the time people hear this.
Right. I mean, and how many times have you heard the stories of, like, drug tests in leagues like this are really just idiot tests?
Right.
Like, can you pass this? Yes, no. Like, come on.
Yeah, are you dumb enough to get caught?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is actually something that happened today, since you brought up Kaepernick.
What happened today?
The NFL has invited Colin Kaepernick for a one-on-one meeting with the commissioner.
In that meeting, is George Goodell going to toss a bunch of files on the table that says, look, you were right, it's all the collusion information, and then set them on fire in front of Kaepernick and cackle?
Well, that is a new way that I imagine this going down. But I had one of two theories.
Oh, okay.
But I like that theory much better.
I'm the third kind of person.
Yeah, so I think we're just going to roll with the third kind of person. I'm going to wait for the story to develop, and we'll talk about it more.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah, at this point, I mean, it's one of two things. Either Roger Goodell is going to try to make peace with Colin Kaepernick to get him to drop the suit, or B, Roger Goodell is going to be a dick to Colin Kaepernick and hoping that he'll drop the suit. But then he won't, and then Roger Goodell is going to be like, we will bury you, and then he's going to go home and try to hide and burn all that collusion paperwork you were talking about.
Right.
Because that's a thing that happened. But, allegedly, anyways.
Yeah, allegedly. I think that's everything we've got. So, with that being said, this has been the Fourth and Wrong podcast. It is November the 7th, 2017. Say goodbye, Keith.
The Browns didn't lose.
Say goodbye, Keith.
Oh, goodbye, Keith.
There we go.
We in this bitch.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready. Oh, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah. It was like, hey, everyone, it's Tuesday. Jump on it. It's a podcast. We're talking about football. Jump on it. It's Fourth and Wrong. We talk about sports. Jump on it. It's a podcast. We do bad jokes. Jump on it. This is one. Yeah.